चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। So we had already started the 7th chapter, which talks about the son of Drona punished. So there seems to be a twist, a turn. So far, we were hearing about Narad Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. The conversation in the last 3 chapters, 4th, 5th, and 6th, there was this conversation, the inspiration of Srimad Bhagavatam. The question was that what was the inspiration, from where did this Bhagavat descend? Who was the inspiration? What was the source? And what are the other questions? Questions regarding Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So to answer the other questions, now we see the chapter is entitled The Son of Drona Punished. Who is the son of Drona? Quickly. Pradeep, who is the son of Drona? And he is to be punished. Not the punishment like Raghunath Das Goswami. This is core punishment. Yes, Ganesh?
Prabhuji, Ashwatthama.
Yeah, Ashwatthama. Why? Because Ashwatthama did a heinous task of killing the innocent sons of the Pandavas. So the chapter begins with the inquiry that the assembled sages headed by Sri Shaunak, they inquired from Srila Suta Goswami that after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? After he received the inspiration and the instruction to compile Srimad Bhagavatam, what he did. And the next 2 verses speaks that what actually Vyasadeva did after his spiritual master left. That he meditated on the banks of Saraswati. What is the name of the place? Without saying, who can answer? Pranav?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Shamma prasha.
Samyak prash. Samyak prash. Samyak prash or samyak prasha. Okay. And in his meditation, what did he realize, or what was revealed to him, is very, very fascinating, very interesting. So I'll recap from the 5th verse, although we have to begin from 6th. So I'll just take a recap from 5th and we proceed. So in that place, Srila Vyasadeva in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. That is why he is called as Badhanarayan, Badrinarayan, or Badhanarayan, because there are many berry trees. And what is the process that he adopted for meditation is given in the 4th verse. Bhakti yogena manasi. He did not take to any impersonal process, but he took to the process of devotional service. And what he saw, this is the 5th verse, very, very important verse. Yayā sammohito jīva ātmānaṁ tri-guṇātmakam paro manute narthaṁ tat-kṛtaṁ cābhipadyate. So what he saw, yayā sammohito jīva, that which bewilders the living entity. And what is the feature of that which bewilders the living entity? Is ātmānaṁ tri-guṇātmakam, which is due to the influence of 3 gunas. So due to the external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Tat-kṛtaṁ cābhipadyate. So this gives the full explanation and the precise reason for why and how the living entity in this material world is captive or is under bewilderment. Prabhupada starts by saying that the root cause of suffering by the materialistic living being is pointed out here with the remedial measure that are to be undertaken. So it is both. The disease has been diagnosed also. What is the disease? It has been perfectly diagnosed. And what is the treatment? That is also offered here. The living being is by constitution transcendental to material encagement. But he is now imprisoned by the external energy. And therefore he thinks one of the material products. He thinks himself one of the material products. So this is the influence of ahankar or false ego. What false ego does? It makes the living entity identify not itself with spirit soul, but with matter. That is body. The living entity misunderstands himself to be the material product. This is only because of the false ego, ahankar. This means the present perverted way of thinking, feeling, and being under material conditions is not natural for him. So our condition is not natural. Prabhupada says in one of the purports of Bhagavad-gītā that the position that the jīva takes in this material world is opposed to his constitutional position because he takes a false position. What is the false position? That he identifies himself with matter, that is body. But he has his normal way of thinking, feeling, and willing. The living being in his original state is not without thinking, willing, and feeling power. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā that the actual knowledge of the conditioned soul is now covered by nescience. What is the verse? There are many verses which can support this statement. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā that the actual knowledge of the conditioned soul is now covered by nescience. What are the verses? that the actual knowledge is not covered by the nations? Please share. What are these verses? Actual knowledge is covered by nations. Do you find some verses in Bhagavad-gītā or not? So please give reference. Yes, Ganesh bro.
Prabhuji, Prakriti Kriyamani Karmani Guna. Oh, that verse, Prabhuji.
That is more talking about material nature. Okay. But here directly it does not refer. Yes, there shall Prabhu.
Prabhuji, same verse, Prabhuji, that ahankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate.
Okay. Someone else? How his knowledge is covered? Krishna talks about it, how the knowledge is covered by nations. Avritam jnanametena jnanino nityaverina. What is that? Kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena anmalena cha. So what covers the knowledge by nations is passion, ignorance. That the actual knowledge of the conditional soul is now covered by nations. Thus, the theory that the living being is absolute impersonal Brahman is refuted herein. This cannot be because the living entity has its own way of thinking in its original unconditional state also. What is the way of thinking in the original unconditional state? What is the thinking in the original unconditional? Yes, there shall bro.
Prabhuji, I am the Lord and Master of whatever I survey.
Please hear attentively. I am asking, what is the way of thinking in its original unconditional state?
Prabhuji, I am part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and my position is to serve Him unconditionally.
So that is the original conditional state. But that conditional state, the original state has been covered with nations, with ignorance. Thus, the theory that a living being is absolute impersonal Brahman is refuted herein. This cannot be because the living entity has its own way of thinking in its original unconditional state also. The present conditional state is due to the influence of external energy, which means that the illusionary energy takes the initiative while the Supreme Lord is aloof. This is a remarkable statement, that the illusionary energy takes the initiative while the Supreme Lord is aloof. The Lord does not desire that a living being be illusioned by the external energy. The external energy is aware of this fact, but still she accepts a thankless task of keeping the forgetful soul under illusion by her bewildering influences. The Lord does not interfere with the task of the illusionary energy, because such performance of the illusionary energy are also necessary for reformation of the conditioned soul. Very beautiful. Like the government does not appoint the police to punish the citizen. Is it so? Is the police appointed to punish the citizens? No. But the police punishes those who break the constitution or those who do not follow the constitution. And what the police does in reforming those who are breaking the laws, the government does not interfere in that. So similarly, this is the thankless task of the material nature or the external energy. An affectionate father does not like his children to be chastised by another agent. Yet he puts his disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. See, very important. Prabhupada is saying that an affectionate father does not like his children to be chastised by another agent. Yet, he puts his disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. So will not allow them to remain disobedient or become even more disobedient. We should always bring them back to order. But the all-affectionate Almighty Father at the same time desires relief for the conditioned soul, relief from the clutches of the illusory energy. The king puts the disobedient citizen within the walls of the jail, but sometimes the king, desiring the prisoner's relief, personally goes there and pleads for reformation. And when the prisoners reform, they are set free. Similarly, the Supreme Lord descends from his kingdom to the kingdom of the illusory energy and personally gives relief in the form of the Bhagavad-gītā, wherein he personally suggests that although the ways of the illusionary energy are very stiff to overcome, one who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord is set free by the order of the Supreme. Which verse is this? Very famous verse, very easy. Of course, from Bhagavad-gītā. Yes, Pranav?
प्रभुजी दैवी ऐसा गुणमयी मम मया दुरतया.
Yes. Mame bhaya prapadyante, maya metam tamantite. So this surrendering process is the remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildering ways of the illusionary energy. This is the only process, which is the surrendering process. The surrendering process is the remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildering ways of the illusionary energy. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. Very important. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. The Lord has suggested, therefore, that by the influence of the speechless, by the influence of the speeches of saintly persons who have actually realized the Supreme, men are engaged in his transcendental loving service. The conditioned soul gets a taste for hearing about the Lord, and by hearing only, one is gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. Hearing, very important. The conditioned soul gets a taste for hearing about the Lord. By such hearing only, he is gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. The whole thing is completed by the surrendering process. Herein also, the same suggestion is made by the Lord in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the heart of every living being, himself as the super soul or as the Paramatma, becomes the spiritual master, and from without, he becomes the spiritual master in the shape of scriptures, saints, initiators, spiritual master. This is still more explicitly explained in this next sloka. personal superintendence of the illusionary energy is confirmed in the Vedas. The Ken Upanishad, in relation to the demigod's controlling power, here it is clearly stated that the living entity is controlled by the external energy in a personal capacity. The living being, thus subject to the control of the external energy, is differently situated. It is clear, however, from the present statement of Bhagavatam, that the same external energy is situated in the inferior position before the personality of Godhead or the perfect being. The perfect being or the Lord cannot be even approached by the illusionary energy, who can only work on the living entities. Therefore, it is sheer imagination that the Supreme Lord is illusioned by the illusionary energy and thus becomes a living being. So this refutes the theory of the monist that both are on the same platform, Brahman platform. No. Jīva gets covered, whereas the Supreme can never be covered. Therefore, okay, if the living being and the Lord were in the same category, then it would have been quite possible for Vyasadeva to see it. And there would have been no question of material distress on the part of the illusion being, for the Supreme Being is fully cognizant. So there are many unscrupulous imaginations on the part of the monist to endeavor to put both the Lord and the living being in the same category. Had the Lord and the living being been there, then Srila Sukadeva Goswami would not have taken the trouble to describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, for they would all be manifestation of the illusory energy. Prabhupada talks about the glorious position of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum remedy for suffering humanity in the clutches of Maya. So what is the diagnosis? Who can summarize? We discussed in so many paragraphs, at least 3-4 paragraphs. What is the diagnosis done? Who is diagnosing? Yeah. William? Who has found the root cause of all suffering? Why it is taking so much time? बोलिए. Yes, Manute Prabhu.
It is spoken about Srila Vyasadeva, who has seen Lord Krishna as the Supreme Person as well as the external energy Maya behind him. So he has got this.
Yeah, Vyasadeva saw it. And in his deep meditation, he was able to realize, he was able to see everything in proper perspective. Very good. Sri Vyasadeva, therefore, first of all, diagnosed the actual disease of the conditioned soul, that is there being illusioned by the external energy. And what is that diagnosis, Manute Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So Vyasadeva has instructed that by association of pure devotees and a surrendered devotee hearing
No, but
from
what
him.
is that? That is true. But I'm asking you that what is the disease? What is the diagnosis? What actually is the disease of the conditioned soul?
Disease is misidentification with this bodily platform.
Yes, misidentification with matter. Very good. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living beings are undoubtedly qualitatively one. But the controller of the illusionary energy, whereas the living entity is controlled by the illusionary. Thus, the Lord and living beings are simultaneously one and different. Another point is distinct herein, that eternal relation between the Lord and the living being is transcendental. Otherwise, the Lord would have not taken the trouble to reclaim the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. In the same way, the living entity is also required to revive his natural love and affection for the Lord. And that is the highest perfection of the living entity. Srimad Bhagavatam treats the conditioned soul with the aim of that goal of life. Anarthopsamam sakshat bhakti yogam madokshate lokasya jananto vidyavam chakre satvata samhita. So anartho upsamam sakshat. Anartho means which has no value, or which are useless. So what Vyasadeva saw, that the material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. Bhakti yoga matokshite. By this, the mass of people do not know this. And therefore, the learned Vyasadeva compiled the Vedic literatures, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Purport. Srila Vyasadeva saw the perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes all parts and parcels also. He saw, therefore, his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, namely his energy and the eternal energy. He also saw his different planetary portions and part of the planetary portions, namely his different incarnations also. And he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls who are bewildered by different incarnations. And he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls who are bewildered by the external reality. And at last, he saw the remedial measure for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it is solely and wholly dependent on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere effort of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed form of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for development of transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on devotional service for the ultimate realization of the Supreme Truth. Very beautiful verse, very, very important verse, this verse. Yasyaham vaishuyamānāya Krishne parama purushe bhaktirutpadyate pamsam shokamoha bhayapaha. Yasyaham vaishuyamānāya. Shuyamana is to hear, to give oral reception. So what by hearing? By simply giving oral reception to the Vedic literature. And when is this possible? Krishna Parama Purushe, that the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, it arises. The Supreme Personality of Godhead sprouts up at once to distinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So one who is endeavoring in this way, he is always on the transcendental plane because he is free from the four defects of the material existence, which is shoka. Shoka means miserable. Moha means illusion. And bhaya, everyone knows what is bhaya. It is fear. So it is all extinguished, apaha. So by taking to the process of hearing attentively from the bona fide source, how it works, that it changes the course. So simply by giving oral reception to the Vedic literature, the feeling of loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once. Two things are mentioned. One is oral reception to Vedic literature, and second point is feeling for loving devotional service to the Lord. So others are sleeping. The feeling for loving devotional service to the Lord Krishna, the Supreme, sprouts up at once to extinguish fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So as one as gives the oral reception, there is change in the heart. What is the change? That there is some desire, some feeling to perform loving devotional service. And by this loving devotional service, four things are permanently eradicated. Shoka, Moha, Bhaya, and Apaha is mentioned here. Long purport. There are various senses of which the ear is the most effective. The senses work even when a man is deep asleep. One can protect himself from the hands of an enemy while awake. But while asleep, one is protected by the ear only. The importance of hearing is mentioned here in connection with attaining the highest perfection of life, namely getting free from the material pains. Everyone is full of lamentation at every point. He is after the mirage of illusionary things, and he is always afraid of his supposed enemy. These are the primary systems of material disease, and it is definitely suggested herein that simply by hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one gets attachment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And as soon as this is affected, the symptom of the material disease disappears. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead. In this statement, it is clearly conditioned. It is clearly confirmed that the all-perfect personality of Godhead is Sri Krishna. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead, and in this statement, it is clearly confirmed that the all-perfect personality of Godhead is Sri Krishna. The ultimate result of devotional service is to develop genuine love for Supreme Personality. Very important statement. What is the purpose? What is the prayojan of our performing devotional service or trying to attempt or failingly trying? It is because we do not believe in this verse. That the ultimate result of devotional service is to develop genuine love for the Supreme Personality. Love is a word which is often used in relation with man and woman. And love is the only word that can be properly used to indicate the relationship between Lord Krishna and living entities. The living entities are mentioned as Prakriti in the Bhagavad-gītā. And in the Sanskrit, Prakriti is a feminine object. The Lord is always described as the Parama Purusha or the Supreme Male Personality. Thus the affection between the Lord and the living entity is something like that between the male and the female. Therefore, the term of love of Godhead is quite appropriate. Very important. See what Prabhupada is writing. Very revolutionary. Loving devotional service to the Lord begins by hearing about the Lord. There is no difference between the Lord and the subject matter heard about him. One moment, what happened? The Lord is absolute in all respects, and thus there is no difference between him and the subject matter heard about it. Therefore, hearing about him means immediate contact with him. Prabhupada is going further. He says devotional service begins by hearing, and there is no difference between the Lord and the subject matter heard about him. And now he is further saying that by the process of vibration of the transcendental sound, and the transcendental sound is so effective that it acts at once by removing all material affections mentioned above. As mentioned before, a living entity develops a sort of complexity by material association, and the illusionary encagement of the material body is accepted as an actual fact. Under such false complexity, the living beings under different categories of life become illusioned in different ways. Even in the most developed stage of human life, the same illusion prevails in the form of many isms and divides. The loving relation with the Lord and thereby divides with loving relations between man and man. By hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed, and real peace in society begins, which politicians aspire so eagerly in so many political situations. The politicians want a peaceful situation between man and man, and nation, but at the same time, because of too much attachment for material domination, there is illusion and fearlessness. Therefore, the politicians' peace conference cannot bring about peace in society. It can only be done by hearing the subject matters described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is profusely quoting how to understand, how to receive Srimad Bhagavatam. It can only be done by hearing the subject matter described in Srimad Bhagavatam about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The foolish politicians can go on holding peace and summit conferences for hundreds of years, but they will fail to achieve success until we reach the stage of re-establishing our lost relationship with Krishna. The illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail. Very important. Until we reach the stage of re-establishing our lost relationship with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail, and thus fearfulness will also prevail. As for the validity of Sri Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from revealed scriptures, and there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from personal experiences of devotees in various places like Vrindavan, Navdeep, and Puri. Even in the Kaumadi dictionary, the symptoms, the synonyms of Krishna are given to sons of Yashoda. Okay. The conclusion is that simply by hearing the Vedic literature Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is saying the conclusion is that simply by hearing the Vedic literature Srimad Bhagavatam, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and thereby one can attain the highest perfection of life by making transcendental worldly miseries, illusion, and fearfulness. These are practical tests for one who has actually given a submissive hearing to the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll stop here. As usual, exhausted. So please try to read, please try to revise, and please try to tune into what the subject matter is being discussed. So how many of you will tomorrow be coming for Snan Yatra? How many have made up your mind? Oh, Sonika, you want to come? But you have to be in time. We will leave from here at maximum 4:30 in the afternoon. Otherwise, we won't be able to reach there in time. There is no point in going when the program is over. Okay, so you are all welcome. Reach Radha Parsadi temple by 4:10 so that you can take first darshan, quick darshan, and then we depart. Hare Krishna. Any discussion or any question? Very important. What is the result of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? 3 effects. Yasyaham vaishruya manaya Krishna parama purushe bhakti utpadyate pumsam. So it will give rise to bhakti and one will become free from shoka, moha and bhaya. No more lamentation, no more hankering, no more illusion and no more fear in the heart. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.